This is the biggest challenge for me, but slideshow. Okay. And from the beginning. Okay, so this is what I would like to talk about, religious discrimination on the workplace and how the Anti-Racism Commission of the Council of Europe helps its member states eradicate it. So I am Stefanos Stavros. If you look at the program, you will see that I come from France. So I happen to be Greek and an international civil servant, but without wanting to sound too sentimental, today I will not take issue with my French identity. So the Council of Europe, it is a regional organization. It has 47 member states, so it is broader than the European Union, and it promotes democracy, the rule of law, and respect for human rights. We are the home of the European Court of Human Rights. I think that a lot of people are familiar with this. The job of the Court of Human Rights is to make sure that the European Convention on Human Rights is properly applied, and the European Convention guarantees, among other rights, the right to freedom of religion. So the Court of Human Rights has had to deal with many cases having to do with religious discrimination in employment, and the court always took a rather conservative approach. So here you have some of the cases. The first three cases had to do with working hours, and the applicants lost. So there was no accommodation for people who did not want to work on Friday or on Sunday or different times and days of the week. And also there are cases about the headscarf against Switzerland and Turkey. And again, the applicants lost in the sense that the banning of the headscarf in these two countries on the workplace was upheld by the Court of Human Rights. It was not a violation of freedom of religion. The last case is the case in which the court gave a signal of a rather more open approach, but again, it found a violation only in respect of a Christian woman who wanted to wear the cross over her uniform, and the policy of the company was not applied consistently. The court did not find a violation in the case of two other applicants, including somebody who did not want to provide services to homosexual couples. So in addition to the European Court of Human Rights, the Council of Europe has some other monitoring mechanisms, including the one to which I am the secretary. So this is the European Commission Against Racism and Intolerance. We are there to combat racism and racial discrimination. And when we define racial discrimination, we understand that the term also includes discrimination on grounds of religion. What we do is that we assess the country's policies. Each country gets assessed once every 5 years. We write a report. And then on the basis of what we know about all countries, we issue general policy recommendations. These are addressed to all member states. And we do also outreach activities. The last general policy recommendation adopted by ECRI has to do with discrimination in employment. It was adopted in June 2012. It is interesting for our purposes because it goes beyond the case law of the European Court of Human Rights. So the link with today's topic, the general policy recommendation stresses the importance to successful businesses of creating workplace environments where workers are respected and their contributions valued regardless of their religion. So this is a business case for combating religious discrimination. The whole recommendation, of course, is about religious discrimination, since it bans direct and indirect discrimination. Religion as such, and there I will join, I think, Kati, that the word religion doesn't figure very often in the recommendation. So these are the instances where you have express provisions about religion. The first one has to do with training and support, so that those who manage human resources can deal with religious diversity. The second specific recommendation has to do with data, so there must be an authority in the country that can collect data about how religious minorities do on the workplace. The third one has to do with combating multiple discrimination. The obvious case is Muslim women. And the fourth one requires public authorities to actively promote equality. And the example is there when a public authority suspects that the proportion of civil servants or local civil servants, the proportion of the religious minorities among its civil servants is very low, it should adopt a plan and try to deal with it. And these are the instances where religion figures in the explanatory memorandum to the general policy recommendation. The first one is very interesting. So employers are required to promote religious equality. So they have to identify barriers to religious minorities' employment, and then they must take steps to accommodate as much as it is possible religious beliefs on the workplace by allowing time for prayers and making sure that dietary requirements are met. The second one is about harassment. So there should be no religious harassment, not only from the employer, but from anybody who represents the employer. This is quite important. And the third one has to do with the burden of proof. I think if you look at the example here, the example is very interesting. It is a small manufacturing company which only allows staff to take annual leave during August and December. Okay, we cannot discuss August. Okay, it is a long month, but December we can discuss, because a Muslim worker wants to be on leave during another period of the year to go to Mecca. So does this person have a case? I mean, I'm sure that the court will examine the case carefully and will find out that there is a good business case, since it is a small company, for only letting people go on leave in August and December. Okay. If you look at it from the perspective of human rights, one can argue that telling us when and when not to take leave, in principle, it is an interference with our private life. And the case stops there. So we have a balancing of interests between private life and the interest of the employer. But if we want to look at it from the point of view of indirect religious discrimination, I think that there we must also take into account the special burden that these leave periods have for people who cannot perform essential religious duties. So I think that if one looks at it carefully, this is a very good case for interpreting the concept of indirect religious discrimination in a meaningful way. So not only private life, the balancing is already there, but also the added dimension of religious discrimination. In addition to the general policy recommendation, we deal with religious discrimination issues quite often in the country reports that we write, and these are some of the issues that we have had to deal with. Muslim women wearing the headscarf. There, the ECRI has gone beyond the Court of Human Rights, has very often criticized countries, not only in respect of the private sector, but also in respect of the public sector. The second one is a very extremely interesting case, an Orthodox Jewish man who refused to shake hands with women, and he made himself unemployed, and they did not want to pay him an employment benefit because he had made himself unemployable. Okay. And the way that I approach the issue is, how often do I go somewhere and the employee stands up and wants to shake my hand? I mean, obviously, this was not an issue that the Dutch court addressed when it decided the case. Of course, a lot of women might find it quite insulting for somebody to refuse to shake hands with them. But how often are employees required to shake hands? And the other one has to do with organizations with a secular ethos. And there, of course, one can imagine that, I don't know, a society, an NGO that fights for secular societies, what do they call it, humanist association, might have an issue with people coming to work with religious symbols. But can a supermarket all of a sudden say that I am an organization with a secular ethos and I refuse any kind of symbols on the workplace? The future challenges. These are issues that we have not, I think, dealt adequately with, but they will keep coming back. One is the employment in faith-based organizations. So this is the other side of the coin of what I have just explained, whether organizations that have very close links with religions, they can discriminate on the grounds of their beliefs. Reasonable accommodation in the employment. There we have started discussing it, but it is certainly something that will keep coming back. Customers' preferences. This is a very big issue. We examined it in the context of Poland. In Poland, the Supreme Court said that gasoline stations that were very close to the border with Germany, they could fire their Polish workers and hire German workers, because people who drove from Germany to buy gas in Poland, they felt much more comfortable being served by people with whom they share the same culture. And again, my question is, how much do you interact with people when you go to buy gas for your car? And the last one, conscientious objection in employment, there the Court of Human Rights gave a very harsh indication, a very strict indication in the case that I referred to. On the other hand, there is a recommendation by the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe which allows much more room for conscientious objection in employment, but also this recommendation must be read with some decisions of the European Court of Human Rights, where the Court of Human Rights found that doctors who exercised the right to conscientious objection and refused to serve some patients, they violated some other human rights of these patients. So if I want to conclude, where does all this lead us? Again, the conclusion might sound a little bit facile, but I will come to what Professor Faubletz said earlier on. Can our societies afford to alienate people who have very strong religious beliefs, or are these people driven to extremism? I think this is one of the key issues that we have to address today. And to come clean on this, I start from a completely neutral ground. Somebody in the morning said that freedom of religion is about allowing people to do good. I don't know whether it is about allowing people to do good or not allowing people to do good. But the truth is that today in Europe, there are a lot of people who hold very strong religious beliefs. So can we afford not to try to accommodate these people? And where are we led when we don't try? So there is the litigation approach. Certainly, we can go to courts and try to fight for the rights, and this is the European Court of Human Rights. But also, we have a non-judicial approach which might allow a better framework for some of these claims. And this is where ECRI comes into this picture. And I hope that I have respected the time. Okay.